the topic of Latinx communities and protests in Utah and beyond. Before we introduce our roundtable participants and get started with the discussion, I want to tell you a little bit about the inspiration for this event and the student learning circle we've organized alongside it. Today's roundtable and the summer learning circle that will follow it respond to a need recently recognized in the UVU Latin American Studies program. With the help of student feedback at our annual conference last fall, we realized that while we've developed plenty of courses and conferences dedicated to topics concerning Latin America, especially regarding its so-called position in the global marketplace, we needed to foster more programming and curriculum for our Latinx students and the specific issues they face here in the United States. Currently, I'd say that our Latinx students would be hard-pressed to locate themselves in our mission statement, for example, except as the quote-unquote fellow students of those actually enrolled in the program. In other words, they seem to be objects of study rather than engaged subjects. And this is something we really want to rectify, starting with this first foray into new programming. And this need, for me at least, felt even more urgent given the protests that took place in Utah, across the country, and around the world last summer. And specifically the response we saw from local activists like the Rose Park Brown Berets to the Salt Lake City police killing of 22-year-old Bernardo Palacios Carvajal last spring. So when my colleagues Leandra and Tino and I began brainstorming this event, we knew that we wanted to center the voices of these local activists as well as our students. We also knew that we wanted it to be an engaged learning event. So we invited 3 leading scholars focusing on Latinx and Chicana-OX activism from diverse academic disciplines to join in on the conversation today, and you'll hear more about them and from them in a moment. Finally, we organized the Student Learning Circle, which will meet throughout the summer to study recent books authored by these scholars and help determine next steps for the Latin American Studies program's growing investment in local Latinx issues. By the way, it's not too late to get involved in the Learning Circle. If you are a UVU student interested in joining us and reading these texts together this summer, please contact one of the organizers, myself, Leandra, or Tino. Our email addresses are up there on your screen. So the students in our Learning Circle have prepared 5 questions for today's roundtable, and we'll spend about 10 minutes discussing each question with the group. Then we'll open up the conversation to those of you tuning in via YouTube Live. If you have a question for one of our roundtable participants, just type it into the chat window on the right side of your screen whenever it occurs to you, and one of the moderators will ask it on your behalf at the conclusion of today's program. We may not be able to get to every question, but we'll do our best, time permitting. Before I introduce our first scholar, I want to thank our sponsors without whom this work would not be possible. Latinx Communities in Protest is funded by UVU Engaged Learning in the Liberal Arts Grant, the TRIO Educational Opportunity Center, the Women's Success Center, the Latin American Studies Program, and the Center for the Study of Ethics. I'm gonna hop back over to this slide so I can introduce our first scholar. Dr. Armando Solórzano is Associate Professor in the Departments of Ethnic Studies and Family and Consumer Studies at the University of Utah. For the last 15 years, he has used photography as a means of cultural dissemination in support of minority groups and historically marginalized populations. For Dr. Solórzano, photography provides a different way of seeing reality and discovering its deeper meanings. His ethno-photographic exhibits have been displayed in Utah, California, Washington, D.C., and Mexico. In 2004, he received the Utah Governor's Award in Humanities. In 2008, a Latino newspaper in Utah recognized him as one of the most prominent Latino thinkers and activists in the state. In the same year, City Weekly granted Dr. Solórzano the award for Best Political Art Exhibit to honor his photographic exhibit of the lives of Latino immigrants in the United States. This photographic exhibit documented the 2006 Dignity March in support of non-authorized workers in the state of Utah. Dr. Solórzano has published several books, among them We Remember, We Celebrate, We Believe, Latinos in Utah from the University of Utah Press in 2014. This is the text you can see on your screen, and it's also the book of his that we're studying together this summer. He's currently working on two new books. One addresses the history of immigration in Utah and the Dignity March, and the second one traces the contribution of Chicanas and Latinas to the Beehive State. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Solórzano while I turn the floor over to my colleague from the Department of Communication, Dr. Johanna Fernandez, so she can introduce our next two scholars.
Thank you so much, Lydia. First, I just want to let everyone know that Dr. Johanna Fernandez will not be able to join us today, but we wish her well. It appears that she's fallen ill. So I will go ahead and introduce Dr. Darrel Wanzer-Serrano next. So Dr. Darrel Wanzer-Serrano is an associate professor of communication and core faculty of Latino and Mexican American studies at Texas A&M University, which is my alma mater. He was formerly director of Latina OX studies at the University of Iowa. His research is focused on the intersections of race, ethnicity, and public discourse, particularly as they relate to formations of coloniality and decoloniality in the United States and within Latina OX context. His award-winning book, The New York Young Lords and the Struggle for Liberation, which you can see here on the screen, was the first scholarly monograph on one of the most significant organizations of the Puerto Rican diaspora. As part of the broader Young Lords project, he edited the Young Lords, A Reader, which was a well-reviewed critical edition of primary source documents produced originally by the organization. His scholarship has also appeared in numerous journals, edited books, and in various public forums. Presently, he is working on two main projects. First, Imagining Latinidades, Articulations of National Belonging, which is a Mellon Foundation-funded Sawyer seminar, just completed its closing conference on Latinx futurity. In addition to wrapping up the eponymous podcast and assembling videos of 20 core speakers from the programming, he's working with co-directors Renee Rocha and Ariana Ruiz to curate an edited book on the subject. Second, he's working on a book project tentatively called Struggling to Live Amid Social Death, Disrupting the Zone of Non-Being, which examines key moments of struggle through which Puerto Ricans enact fugitive, ephemeral moments of life against all odds. Now, I also wanted to let you all know that Dr. Wanzer-Serrano might have to leave a few minutes early for another engagement, but nonetheless, we're glad you're here. Welcome, Dr. Wanzer-Serrano, and now I will pass it on to my amazing colleague, Tino, to introduce the Rose Park Brown Berets.
Hello, everyone. Name is Agustin Diaz, but I just go by Tino, and I work at Utah Valley University. Now, I want to go ahead and introduce the Brown Berets and at Rose Park, and I really appreciate Pachuco and also being here present with us in this roundtable conference. So the Rose Park Brown Berets are a Salt Lake City political organization which strives to empower the community through education, culture, and self-determination. They are born from the broader Chicano movement in the late 1960s and remain active to the present day. The group was seen as part of the Third World Liberation Front and largely revolved around farm workers' struggle, educational reform, and opposition to the Vietnam War, while also organizing against police brutality. The Brown Berets are still around, engaging liberation and among our many communities. Please welcome the Rose Park Brown Berets. I'd like to also go ahead and have our students take over. They drafted some questions as part of our reading group. And so the first one will go to Priscilla. And Priscilla, appreciate you being here, and go ahead and do your thing.
Cool. Okay, I'm so excited. My name is Priscilla. I am a student with the Integrated Studies major with my emphases in sociology and communication. So once again, I'm so excited to be here. And my first question that I have my phone, so I apologize for looking down for a second. But my first question, as I was reading the introductions to these books that we received and to learn more about the Brown Berets, I was just wondering, what was it like to do this research, and how did it feel for you all personally? How does being Latinx fundamentally influence the way you participate in research about your own culture? especially because I feel that Latinx history is so inaccessible and we don't know much about where we come from or where our families come from. So can we just hear a little bit about your guys' inspiration and your headspace when you guys engage in activism or when you guys were writing these books?
I'll jump in first, if that's okay. I write about this a little bit in the introduction to my book because I think it's important to talk about this stuff and to tell these kinds of stories. For me, I grew up. So I grew up in I guess it might probably be considered sort of rural Western Washington state, and going to school and going to college, I didn't really have any Latino, Latina, Latinx, teachers or anything like that. And it wasn't until what was supposed to be my last semester of graduate school that I finally had a teacher recommend that I do my project for her class on something related to my Puerto Rican heritage. And this was great. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Where the heck do I start? So I grabbed an anthology and started reading it. And a couple of things happened. One is I read the opening entry in that anthology was Sandra Maria Estevez's poem Here. And I read that poem and I started crying in the coffee shop that I was reading it in, because this was like the first time that I got poetry, that I like really felt poetry, right? And then the second thing that happened is that's when I ran across some stuff on the Young Lords, and I'd been planning on doing a very academic dissertation on ballots and elections and psychoanalysis. I'm so glad I didn't do that, but I realized like at that moment that this needed to be my project, and it ticked a lot of people off. My advisor wasn't too happy with me, I don't think, but they came around to it, and it's been, it's consumed a bunch of my life, and it's wonderful. Like I'm so glad to have been able to write about the Young Lords, to be able to provide resources back. I mean, like one of the things that I did was, even before doing my book that some of you are reading right now, my edited volume, The Young Lords a Reader, that was the big thing that I published on the Young Lords, because people needed access to the words of the Young Lords. And they were that stuff was all holed up in institutions and places like NYU. And if you don't have the right credentials, you ain't getting into NYU's Tamiment, library archives to see that stuff. And so my commitment to the Young Lords, people who I was interviewing, working on the project, was I wanted to get this stuff out to people as soon as I could. And so that's kind of where my headspace has been. It's always been kind of rooted in a commitment to their activism, which really kind of spoke to me on a personal level once I started learning about it. I mean, I was again, a Puerto Rican from rural Washington state, getting a graduate degree in the middle of Indiana, and then suddenly turned on to all the stuff about the New York Young Lords. So.
Yeah, on my side, well, I started engaging in the Chicano civil rights movement in my teenage ages, when Reyes Lopez Tijerina, one of the leaders of the Chicano movement, went to Mexico City to ask help from Mexican students and to bring about the project of Aztlán as an independent nation. He went to Mexico City and other states of Mexico to recruit the students, and a good number of us, crossed the border. Guess what? For us, it was no border. But that was my engagement at a very young age into the Chicano civil rights movement and into decolonized social movements in general. When I came to Utah, what moved me was what is called the cognitive dissonance. And mainly it's a psychological situation when your knowledge doesn't match the reality where you are living. Even at the age of 3 years old, I learned that Utah was part of the Mexican territory. However, when I came to Utah in the 1990s, that fact was denied, arguing that the beginning of Utah was 1847, and that didn't match what I know. So again, that, made me feel uncomfortable with the whole academia, mainly because, again, everything that was reading was not written by Chicanos, was not written by Mexican Americans, was mainly written by Anglo-American people with a very distorted notion of history. And even in my own departments here, my colleagues, good number of them were Hispanics. They deny the long history of Hispanics in the Baha'i state. I start getting into these issues of internalized oppression. What happened to the researchers, to the academicians in Utah that don't tell the history for what it is? And again, that prompted me to jump into what I call academic activism. And by that, I mean redefining the curriculum of the university, bring Chicano students, including myself, right? Changing the national pedagogy, connecting to community, establishing relationship or grassroots organization. And again, that start creating the necessity for a long and maintained contribution, especially with the student body. And my line of research, again, trying to confront the prevailing official line of academia in Utah, which again is reflected in the first chapter of my book, which again, when I claim that our brothers and sisters of the LDS religion were the first undocumented immigrants in this place, by the fact that they entered in 1847 and this was Mexican territory. That article, again, was completely misinterpreted. And the day after the article was published, probably I get 2,000 invitations to leave the state and to leave the nation, the country. So again, that reinvigorated me. And I said, maybe I'm doing something right here. And that's what it has, again, fueled my participation in academia, in activism in many different ways.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's like, the question is like, I don't know, how did we get involved? Let's say I'm still reading the question, but like, I don't know, like, for us at least, well, I'll start from my point of view. I had gone into let's say activism a few years ago, working with a number of groups, like just in the local scene. But a lot of it was over on the east side of Salt Lake, and that with that distance, it was one expensive because me, I would say I'm a child of the West Side, born and raised in West Valley, and I was. It was fine, but I was looking for another group, what's it, closer to home, and that's when I happened upon the Rose Park Brown Berets, and I would say for us that is our greatest focus. Like our people who live around us, over here on the West Side, and most of our efforts are to that end of helping our people out. And I mean, to that, I don't know, you want to jump in here?
Oh yeah, so just or because we just consider ourselves organizers because we don't have no other choice but to organize our people. You know what I'm saying? I was born and raised in Rose Park, So but yeah, what I'm saying, we're just very confrontational, very direct, towards politicians, towards slumlords, towards the pigs, you know what I'm saying? Like we have no other choice but to resist. And you know what I'm saying? And with that too, we gotta struggle with our own people as well. You know what I'm saying? But like a bunch of activists that don't understand, that don't even come from this environment, from like Rose Park, Glendale, you know what I'm saying? So, but we understand, we struggle with our people because, you know what I'm saying, it's the system that's pushing us, forcing us to live in these harsh conditions. And we also do a lot of mutual aid work too, so we gotta make sure our peeps got, their basic necessities met, make sure they got their clothes, you know what I'm saying, food, you know what I'm saying? That's what we've been fighting against gentrification because that shit's hitting hard, especially in Rose Park towards North Temple, towards the airport. You know what I'm saying? Like they're trying to gentrify that whole strip right there to put luxury apartments. And big thing too is empowering the youth. You know what I'm saying? We got a bunch of youth that we work with that are part of our organization as well. And we're just proud of them too. Once you empower the youth, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how we get hate on, even on the Salt Lake School District, you know what I'm saying? Like real talk. But
it's still like, work that has to be done, even more so with the youth, because, we could be doing this, for a good minute, but at least for us, it's important to like bring up like, the revolutionaries of the future, and like a lot of our youngsters, like they got a lot of energy, far more energy than than I'll ever have again, and I probably got into this like I was like maybe like 24, so starting them off like at least a decade ahead of time, it's just like they're gonna get so much more accomplished with that. And we'll just be able to organize more and better and faster. At least that's the hope anyways.
Yeah, it takes the hood to save the hood, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I love that saying, takes the hood to save the hood. So thank you for that. Let's go ahead and have our next student, Hannah, share the next question.
Hi guys, I'm so excited to be here. I'm Hannah Fernandez. I'm a writing studies major in the UVU English department, and I have a philosophy minor. And my question is like, I don't know, I feel like what the Brown Berets were just saying right now about like, the youth and like getting them involved was like an excellent segue, because I feel like my question is really concentrated on that kind of like the identity development of the youth, like getting them to identify with, with their Latinx roots and like feeling like they're valid in their Latinidad. So I just want to know, like, if you guys could talk to us a bit about your own identity development, like how did you come to be involved in this work? And like how did you make that process of identity development into your whole life? Do you know what I mean? Like into like, how did you, I don't know, like, and then how does like the obscurity of Latinx history kind of play into your having to make it your whole life, as opposed to it just being available and accessible? And what advice, I guess, do you have for us maybe about like in terms of trying to find that community and trying to find that identity? Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, so if I may, like I don't want to get too personal, but I'll try to go through it quickly. Like, I mean, for much of my life, it has been defined by who I am not, or who who I wasn't, rather than what I am, like as a person, so being like separated from most of my family, like in what's in Mexico, like because I didn't grow up in Mexico, I don't necessarily feel a right to like call myself Mexican. I always just say my parents are Mexican, but I'm an American, not by choice, but just as a matter of a fact. Also, just like growing up, I don't know, I was a piece of shit, just like super machista and like angry all the time until like I don't know, came more to terms with like my own like sexuality and gender identity. I'm a non-binary and bisexual. And it's partly because of that I realized it's just like, oh, I'm in danger in some way. I got to read up. It's just like I got to know more about myself so I can protect myself. And then later on, like when after like the election, I was just like, okay, I got to know even more. I got to get involved. I got to do something, to protect me, to protect my community. And like, it was just it was out of a growing like realization that there's more to this world than just myself. And I feel like a big part of that is like shedding off the like sort of like individualist mindset that is so like ever present like here in America, that they like sort of brainwash us into. And again, like with my past experience, a lot of like the groups that I worked with when I was first starting out, like a lot of them were like a lot of white people, which isn't bad, but I wanted to like find like people like close to me, and that's when I found the Brown Berets. Like I was just like looking it up, just like on Google. It's just like, all right, like brown radicals, brown revolutionaries. Again, I was still like pretty. I am still pretty radical, I should say. And lucky enough, there was a chapter right here that I could join. And I lost the thread a little bit here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Just about my bad. I got lost in the questions, pretty long. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so confused about my own identity that it makes me get lost in the question. But I don't know, it's just dealing with like identity development and how do you come to terms with your Latinidad in a place where it's not super, like where like the history of Latinidad in Utah is super obscure, I guess, or hidden.
Mm.
Yeah, just I think just like, like, cause I'm from Rose Park, so like, I'm surrounded by a lot of Chicanos, Polynesians, African Americans, even poor whites, just, I don't know, for me, like I always been proud of my heritage, you know what I'm saying? So it's probably a little different for me. And just like, before I got down with the Brown Berets, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't too familiar with the word Chicano, because you don't hear that much. You don't hear that a lot these days.
Mm-hmm.
The word Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, and just learning about that history, why it's important to identify as a Chicano is because our people fought for the identity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? We gave ourselves that identity. It wasn't the government who came up for us, like the word Hispanic. You know what I'm saying? Chicano, came from the roots of our ancestors, and just like understanding like the history of colonization, of like how like our roots came from these lands that we're standing on, because we're standing on stolen land. And just learning, just embracing your indigenous roots, just continue learning, you know what I'm saying, even like practice, you know what I'm saying, your indigenous ways, as much as possible, because the system we live under, they're trying to continuously colonize us, to assimilate into a capitalist, you know what I'm saying, to be ashamed of where you come from. So, just for you just to like embrace your indigenous side, just continue learning, just be humble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would also stress is just like like try to find like people like you around you, like in person. I know that's hard right now with like the pandemic and whatnot. But you know, like more than reading, let's say, I feel like it's very important to take like an active like participation in let's say like your people's culture, you know, find other people like you, interact with them, because there's only so much you can do like just on your own and like in a vacuum, you know. It's just like it's that like interaction that like really like helps you I don't know, develop and like reconnect, I would say. Like my Spanish was shit up until I joined and like, you know, speaking with this fluent Spanish and all the others as well, you know.
Mhm.
And then now, like, you know, my Spanish has gotten better, and all the other people I interact with, you know, having to speak Spanish with all of them, you know.
Mhm.
So it's that like active like practice and engagement that I feel really helps.
Yeah, I think, Priscilla, you raise a fundamental question. I mean, not only for Chicano, Latino, Hispanic, Spanish speaking, whatever, however they want to call it. But I think it's a fundamental question that brings some people to say, well, I don't know, have an identity, which I don't believe it is accurate, because identity is something that you are continuously negotiating, especially for us. I mean, like in my case, right? My father is a native Mexican, an Indian, okay? Even that word, we don't use it anymore. But, you know, my mother comes from French descent, right? But I was born in Mexico, but I grew up in the United States, but certainly I became an activist. So again, when the system gives you three boxes for you to fit in, you know that that is a trap. Because once, again, you think you gain an identity, people are going to be contesting it, right? So again, do I identify as a Native American? Well, I have to do it, because if I don't do that, it's denying my heritage on my father's side. Do I identify myself as, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, European, white? Well, I cannot deny that in me, and I have to recognize it. Again, can I deny my Mexicanity? Of course not, because I carry those values with me, all this knowledge. Can I deny my Americaniness, whatever that means? Well, I cannot do that. So it's something that you are continuously negotiating. But down at the bottom, I think this question has been answered by Chicana feminists who say, stop playing the game. I am a borderless woman. I don't belong to any country, right? I a genderless person, right? I don't buy into this binary. So do I know what I am? Yes, I know. And then it comes the answer. I am a new way of being a human. What is that? Living in between of everything that precisely define this society. You are either or. But when you live in between, you are moving constantly and redefining what it means to be a human being, right? I mean, the way even my definition is given by Western civilization, I don't buy into that, because I already challenged, right? When the colonizers came to this continent, they dehumanized us by making us believe that Indians were irrational. Well, 30 years later, they changed their mind and they say, oh boy, you can think. After all, you construct the whole Aztec civilization or the Taino civilization or the Maya civilization. So you can think. Then you can be human beings. Down at the bottom again, uh, your, your identity, you have to negotiate it and establish who you are. And that's why we define this American society, who they define their identity in contraposition to us. But down at the bottom, we, as people of color, as minority or Indian, will remind them who they are. And who are they? Nothing without us. So I'm essential part in the negotiation of my identity. And I'm talking about my gender identity too, right? That they classify me as a straight. Well, which part of my life? At what period of time? You cannot control my feeling and reduce to sexuality. Again, this is a fundamental question. And I think, again, my leaders on this are, the Chicano feminists and Salduda and all this movement were bring me to a new way of identifying myself as a human being. And that is what we are negotiating. Oh, Dr. Wanzer-Serrano, I know you are trying to prove something. Please.
No, not trying to prove anything. I was just holding up another great book on the subject, Sheila Sandoval's Methodology of the Oppressed. But look, like talking about identity, my name is Darrel. My middle name is Alan. My mom, right, operating under the forces of assimilation and the desire for acculturation, right, didn't teach my brother and me Spanish because, in her words, right, she wanted to, quote unquote, raise good American boys, right? My elementary school put me through speech therapy, kindergarten through third grade, because as best as I can tell, I had a rural Puerto Rican accent because, that's how my mom talked, right? And so that's the environment I grew up in. You talk about like not understanding that history, like the bits that I understood, right, were pieces of stories and aphorisms and some of that I didn't even start to understand the significance of until I was in my mid-20s. And it was in those practices of reading with others and talking with others, right? And not so much finding community, but making community, right? Which continues to be an ongoing process, right? Look, I am a tenured associate professor. I was the first quote unquote underrepresented minority scholar tenured in the 100-year history of the communication department at the University of Iowa. And it was not an easy process, right? I'm in a field where in the top journal in rhetorical studies, there are, a dozen or so articles published by Black, Indigenous, and scholars of color. There are 3 competitively selected articles or authors published who are Latino in that journal, in like over 100-year history of publishing in that journal, right? And so that process of making community is ongoing, right? It's an everyday thing. Yeah. in the immediate spaces I'm in, right? And in the broader, for me in my academic life, in those broader disciplinary, interdisciplinary, and anti-disciplinary spaces. So it's I think it'll always be ongoing, right? I mean, especially when you start from that place, right? When you start from that place of like your history has essentially remained unwritten, right? And access to it has been denied, and it's not taught in primary school or secondary school. It's basically not taught in universities, right? Unless you happen to be taking a class in Latinx studies or something like that. And even then, right, getting into the vast complexity and heterogeneity of what makes up who we are, getting into issues of that are central to articulations of Latinidad is like the maintenance and continuation of anti-Blackness within our own communities and within our disciplinary spaces as well, and within our institutional spaces. It just keeps going and going, right? And I find strength in that too.
Yeah, that's what I like, to have the presence of the Brown Berets here, because they are covering the identity of the whole Chicano civil rights movement that shifted the plane on which we create identities. I mean, if you ask, Pacheco, Yoso, and all of them in the Brown Beret, they say, no, our identity is not based on these categories that the American society give us. Our identity is based on values. The Brown Beret fight for justice. They fight for the protection of the land. After all, this is a land. This is the sacred land. So again, my identity is my loyalty to the land, not my loyalty to the way I look. That is so arbitrary, superficial, that again, that is the contribution of why the Brown Berets are fighting for. Shift the categories on which we build and construct our identity. Of course, if they see me as, probably they see you, Professor Wanzer-Serrano, they see us with a book. I say, oh, a Chicano and Latino with a book, that doesn't match us. That doesn't match their expectation. But for me, again, a book, and that's what I write books, I don't write articles. And that my colleagues at UVU, like Leandra and Lydia, they understood, right? You don't write articles, you are going to be out of this game. But I challenge that. I write books. Why? Because for me, a book is a symbol of liberation. Okay. Why? Because again, after emancipation, during the slavery period in 1865, a Black person carrying a book, it meant to the white people freedom. That was a challenge. And they don't have anything. They didn't look at the skin. They look at the book. And I think that's what I admire your work, Brown Berets, because do you really care for the education of our people? Because without education of our history or roots, the categories on which we define our identity is a lost battle. And that's where the activism come. Even if you look at, I'm going to stop here again because I get all excited and you can hear all my language from the 1670s. That's why, again, even the organization of MECHA, the Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, it shifted, right? Yeah. From the color of the skin to what they have now in the mission. We are people who fight for justice, for peace, for freedom. I don't care if you are brown, white, yellow, purple. What I care is that you carry my values that identify me as a brown beret, right?
Absolutely.
And that is fascinating of you guys. Certainly one thing, and I think the whole audience here and the people who are engaged with us, they might challenge your tactics, but that's different. That's different from your identity. Tactics is the way you carry the message. Some people might challenge it, but to me, it's the only way they listen. And if that's the only way they listen, we have to use it.
Profe, sorry to cut you off. I want to make sure that the Brown Berets get a quick word in, and then we go on to the next question for the students.
Yeah, I definitely I just want to say that, like, I absolutely second everything that has been being said in the chat, and also that, yeah, just like for us, what I guess that is the more important thing, the work being done, and the identities that we build, together, because there's no like, we don't turn people away based on the color of their skin, or where where they're from, like what their nationality or what the ethnicity is. For us, because the West Side is full of so many different people, and we all we're all sharing a similar struggle. It's in that that shared struggle that we build bonds and community around.
Thank you. I want to have Jorge go next, who's one of our students, with a question too, please.
Hey guys, I'm Jorge Garcia. I'm currently a biology major, minoring in Latin American studies, hopefully with the hopes of going to medical school someday. So, but the question that I have for you guys also kind of encompasses identity, but in a different aspect. So I noticed that a lot of you guys' texts discuss religion in some way, whether specifically in Utah with theologically coded manifest destiny justifying the co-option of Mexican and indigenous land, or the role the church ought to play in a community. And so I'm interested to know whether you guys think colonized peoples can even stay or can ever stay true to their roots while practicing the faith of their colonizer. And what does the decolonization of race and spirituality look like? Just because Utah has a unique religious or racial context wherein the dominant religion has been critiqued for its perceptions of race, sexuality, gender, etc.
Well, if you want me to jump into, yeah, this is a fascinating story given the fact of the overwhelming power of members of the LDS Church. We need to keep in mind that the process of decolonization implied two steps. One, the first one is to eradicate the practices and the ideologies of the colonizer. But it doesn't stop there. We need to propose new ways of thinking and decolonizing our minds, right? So in this sense, again, we need to distinguish between what is religion and what is spirituality. Because again, as part of my decolonization project, I'm not going to play with religion. I'm going to play with spirituality, something that is not controlled by any institutions. And that's exactly what we are trying to do here. And just again, I mean, I have like 20 points to make on this particular issue, but I just want to take on the one, Jorge, that you mentioned. Yes, in Utah it's very difficult because religion comes cover under the principle of manifest destiny and Christianity. Okay, so remember, under manifest destiny, Brigham Young was told, "Hey, this is it. This is the place, and we even have a monument for that." Well, guess what? 10,000 years ago, the god of the Aztec people told us, "This is your land. This is us land." So how we are going to create a dialogue among these two different theological, religious, spiritual projects, right? And I try that with my students when I teach my class on the Chicano civil rights movement in Utah. One of the conditions from, again, the Brown Berets in Utah and the leaders in Utah, when they start the Chicano civil rights movements, was only two conditions on which we're allowed to organize. One, you cannot mention the word Aztlán. Interesting, right? Why? Because the word Aztlán is going to conflict with the word Zion, right? After all, this is Zion. And those are two very different religious projects. How we're going to get into conversation into that? Second one, we were not allowed to word the word Chicano, okay? Because Chicano will, again, I'm going to say it, it's in the documents, implies confrontation. And remember, in Utah, we are nice people. We always have to, I don't know, listen whatever the premise is. So again, you can see here, it's one of the difficult issues to deal with. And again, I'm just going to mention that one of the beginning of the conversation is how the LDS religion introduced us, meaning Latinos, Hispanics, into the theology. Remember, after all, we are the Lamanites. We are the people that they are going to save. It's hard. Again, in the decolonization of our minds, I start by questioning the theology, right? Which is the foundation of all beliefs. And I'm going to leave it there I just throw some ideas that, again, it is hard. Just let me, one more politically. In Utah, the majority of our Latino Hispanic leaders are LDS. So how, again, it's a matter of tactics, how our concerns are Latinos or low levels of education, unemployment, the higher rates of COVID victims, both in the hospitals and in the cemeteries, right? How the large number of children has been put now under adoption, right? How all this is going to be percolate all the way up to the LDS or to the legislators, when the majority of them are LDS, and we have to admit it, the majority of the population in Utah, Latino population, are Catholics, right? 85% of them are Catholics. Only 13% of the rest of the populations are LDS. So it's a wonderful conversation, but again, I would like to hear other angles, especially the students. How do we go about this?
I just want to like add in real quick. Like, I think the Young Lords offer like one example, an exemplar for how to do this, right? I mean, on the one hand, right, they were clearly resistant to organized religion, right? And in some contexts, they were pretty upfront about that. But I think what they did, right, in New York and the takeover of the People's Church the first time is they tapped into what we now, today we would call liberation theology, really, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
They tap into the kind of words of Jesus and actions of Jesus as a way of addressing that audience and addressing the values that they have, right, while still railing against, right, the structures of church, right? In this case, the First United Methodist Church in East Harlem. And in doing that, I mean, I think what they demonstrate is some really strong rhetorical sensibilities, right? They show you how you can come into a space, not just saying no to everything, right? But saying yes to the things that make sense, meeting people where they're at, and trying to kind of go and move people from there, right? And so meet people where they're at, embrace the parts that are consistent with what you believe and what you're trying to do, right? In the case of the Young Lords, with a revolutionary decolonial politics, and push back against the stuff that doesn't make sense, right? That is problematic. And I mean, it's audience analysis, right? It's understanding who your audience is, where they're at, and then tactically engaging in a way that is, that they can hear, in ways that demonstrate that you're listening to who they are too, and at the same time in ways that are that remain consistent with your values and your beliefs, right? Because religiosity doesn't have to mean religion with a capital R, and there's lots of ways to be able to dialogue with each other on those issues.
Yeah, and then again, I think there are very good insights. In fact, we do have LDS scholar, and I'm going to mention one of your colleagues at the UVU, Professor David Clark. He did an amazing study of the Catholic religious phenomenon here in Salt Lake City, right? On the tree of the Virgin of Guadalupe. Some of you know about this. He gave a wonderful interpretation using liberation theology. Oh my gosh, I was never expecting that. But it is so refreshing to see, again, to look more for religion as an established institution. And he did an amazing study looking at the candles in the tree and looking at the majority of them came from China. And then he put a religion in the international globalization context. Wonderful. I mean, there is room here to grow, and we will. There is another terrific scholar on this at BYU, Ignacio Garcia. Some of you know him. He has done amazing work on what is called the Latinization of the LDS people, meaning that all culture, traditions, way of seeing are reaching the LDS population. No? He gives a good example that sometimes you go to the homes of the LDS people and you see in the living room the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe. You say, hey, bro, what's going on here? Right? So the whole story is fascinating. I wish they can give us a week, right, Professor Wanzer? They give us a week to keep talking. Fascinating. Yeah.
I love to just cut in really quick and get the Brown Berets to just speak on this for a minute.
I mean, yeah, reading up on this this question, I don't know. At least for me, it was kind of hard because I consider myself a pretty like hard atheist, like you know, like no ties to like religion or spirituality. I was already a skeptic as a kid, and then very early on, I was just like an atheist, like nah, never mind. But yeah, no, I mean, like as a like an organization and just like ourselves personally, you know, we're opposed and have a very adversarial relationship to like any institution that like oppresses our people. And to that end, you know, we would consider the church itself as part of that, you know. Like, I mean, like it's sort of, I don't know, I struggle because I think about just like myself personally. This comes from a more like anarchist like perspective, you know. Everyone is still like free to do as they want and what they choose to believe, you know. And Darrel was saying, you know, we take the positive aspects and we work with people, you know, when like their beliefs and our values like align, and you know, and we struggle with them when it comes to you know, the more harmful aspects of their beliefs, at least in particular, like views on like LGBT Q plus folks and like gender roles and very machista like attitudes that come from like church teachings and values.
Yeah, thank you. I want to make sure we get to the next question. Oscar, a good friend of mine, good student of ours, has a question as well.
I apologize, I can't have my camera on. It like makes the internet super unstable. Well, I'm Oscar. I'm a student at UVU, part of the Raíces group, and I'm majoring in social work, wanting to work with youth and specializing in Latino youth. And my question is, what advice would y'all give the young Latino communities about connecting to their heritage, like connecting with each other, advocating for more representation, and how can we get their attention and keep them engaged in what represents them, because they've just been ignored for so long?
I want to jump in and give an education context answer to that question, because I think it's a great question. And the big part of my answer is, as students at a university, at any university, you are one of the most powerful voices in that context. Administrators listen to students' demands when the students get loud enough. The hardest part is administrators also know that students are there for ideally 4, sometimes 5, occasionally 6 years at most, right? And they'll try to wait it out. And so the key thing is being able to generate those spaces, those coalitions, and those chains of argumentation, right, that continue and can maintain relevance beyond your 4 years, right? Because you got to be thinking, you got to approach this understanding that you may not be successful. It may be the next generation of students that has to be successful in these struggles. So that's the that's the key thing for me, is like organizing as students, having these student groups, and making those demands on the institutions to actually, because every institution wants to like talk a good talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And they're all like happy about it, and they want to put you on their catalogs and have you in their media and this and that, right? But like when it comes time to like forming a Latino studies program or building a cultural center, right, where students can actually go and hang out, which is like really, really important, then they're like, oh yeah, we'll get to that, sure, eventually, right? And then they don't, right? I mean, here at Texas A&M, there isn't a student center, there isn't a center, a space for Latinx students to go and just be, right? We even had that at Iowa. Like 30 or 40, well, actually, I think they're celebrating their 50th anniversary this year, right? This is Texas. Half of all graduating students in public schools are Latinx students. So, and that's something that, I mean, I think that's something that like, the Puerto Rican Student Union understood, right, and was successful because they made those demands in the 60s and in the 70s. The Young Lords and their coalitions with student groups, like students have a lot of power if they can harness it and direct it and maintain it and outweigh administrators.
Yeah,
if I may, what do you could you like further define like what you mean by representation? I feel like if I got a clear answer of that, I could maybe give you a better answer.
So I guess kind of just having more kind of people that you would say that are in power, like that are up in representation, to kind of, I guess, kind of help with identity as well. Like show that there's good representation of our heritage in these big facilities, in these big kind of communities.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would say like, if it's like some sort of like institutional like representation, like what I would say is that I would encourage young youth to build something from the ground up. I've like, for us, like a lot of tokenization is a really big like concern of ours. It's why we're pretty careful about who we work with, and to that end, we try to have like control of our most of how we are presented, and that we're not just used as a brown face. And my concern with some like representation is that like issue of tokenization, and I would encourage people to build like something from the ground up, so you do have that control over it, and you're not like told to slow down or pulled back, you're being too like radical. And I mean, in a lot of ways, like if you want to do something like that, on campus, I don't know if I can recommend it, but I will say for us, we just go wherever. We just take over a space. We don't bother with permits and like asking and pleading, saying, "Oh, do you mind if it's someone we know, and someone who's going to be cool, fine, like the people like in Rose Park." But if it's like the government or the state, it's just like, we're gonna do whatever, who's gonna stop us? Like, who is physically gonna come and stop us? Nobody. Not before we're done. And I would say it's just like, take that chance. You get away with a lot more than what you think you would. And it's like, without someone to physically stop you, the only one who really can is yourself, out of fear. I mean, I don't know, what else would you add?
Just coming from just from the hood perspective, what I'm saying, because we work with a lot of youth that come from the barrio, what I'm saying, as myself. And so like, what I'm saying, just empowering the youth, like where they come from, what I'm saying, like be proud of where they come from, what I'm saying, using hip hop culture, what I'm saying, doing basketball games, whatever. And also like, what I'm saying, like for all our young kids that are like, they're trying to get into, to gangs and stuff, what I'm saying, we apply that political consciousness to them to bring for freedom, what I'm saying, instead of banging on each other, banging on a system that pushed us to live like this, what I'm saying, you're gonna be wearing that red and blue, what I'm saying, become a revolutionary, what I'm saying, just like how, the Bloods and Crips, the Norteño Sureño, what I'm saying, they try to unite, the next thing you know, they get infiltrated by the pigs, by the counterpro, what I'm saying, and it becomes a whole, divide thing again. So we just empower our youth, especially that are like, like gang banging and stuff, to start banging on the system, putting that energy into, banging for freedom.
Yeah. I guess to that end is just like, that's like, I don't know, a lot of like trying to be part of the system, you have to play by the system's rules, and you start to lose yourself in that regard. And although there's a lot of like challenges and struggles and a lot of logistic like problems that you have to deal when you're building something like brand new, the greatest benefit to that is it's under your control. It's just like no one else can tell you what to do. You start to build that people power in your community, and and you can leverage that against people who would otherwise tear you down, or would just like pull on the strings when you're tied to to their spaces and their resources. You don't have that issue when you control it yourself.
And I know that we haven't had the profe go ahead first, but I want to get to the last question we have on our roundtable discussion. I truly appreciate the information and the flow of like knowledge we're getting from everybody here. This is remarkable, so thank you. Natalie, you want to go ahead and share your last question?
Yeah, so I'm Natalie. I am a communication major at Utah Valley University with an emphasis in PR. And my question is, can you tell us more about your perspectives on activism, particularly within the context of recent events? So things like Black Lives Matter or Stop Asian Hate. And to what extent can or should violence play a part in activism for social justice causes?
Here, y'all can either one of y'all can go first.
I think Darrel's got to jump out early, so we have to say goodbye to him. Bye, Darrel.
Sorry, bye everyone.
Get to
Thank
miss
you so
one
much for having me.
conversation.
This is amazing conversation. I want to have more conversations like this with all y'all.
Let's keep doing it.
You'll be the first of many, Darrel. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Now that leaves.
Let me take some risk here.
Okay, let's hear it, Armando.
This is what we talk about, you know, in the previous set of questions. I do feel uncomfortable with the dialogue that is presently going in terms of racial conflicts in society. And again, because this is just a panel and you put your ideas and everybody can refute them or work on that. But I believe that the problem that we have right now is that the dialogue among races, and I'm talking about, you know, Latinos, and Native Americans, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders, and African Americans, the dialogue historically for 400 years has been taking place only within the white and black racial dualism. But our agenda is not there, right? We have all this unspoken, unhuman brutality against our brothers and sisters of the Black race. But the same brutality happened for Latinos. We just mentioned the case of Palacios Carvajal. Why we don't rally about that? Why that life is not that as publicized as other lives, as other minority people lives. And again, this seems to me it's a problem, right? Because again, you look at if life matters for Latinos too, look at how many people, how many Latinx and Chicanos have died because COVID in Utah. We have the highest percentage. 48% of all cases in COVID as for Latinos. Why? Our life doesn't matter? Why we don't bring that into the public? And again, because this obsession of white and black racial dualism. Can we talk? I mean, we are repeating the same sentences that our black brother mentioned when in LA when he was assassinated to the police. Can we talk? That's what Latinos should say to the whole state of Utah and the nation. Can we talk? And probably the Brown Berets, my friends, are right. I mean, if we're not going to ask permission to talk. We have to be heard. And to me then, not to monopolize this section, to me the issue is to address institutional racism that affect all of us. And we cannot grade the level of racism, institution of brutalization. Racism is inhuman. Brutalization is not accepted. It doesn't matter for whom, right? So again, open this analysis of institutional racism and discrimination, especially of Utah. This is what the Brown Berets are telling us today. Look at the levels of education, mainly based on racism. To me, it is unacceptable that the Salt Lake School District have 58 of our kids being children of color. And we don't have teachers. We don't have anybody who teaches about Aztlán or roots or heritage or presence of Utah, Dominguez and Escalante, right? The fact that we have, I'm sorry to say it, a monument to the Mormon battalion outside the Capitol with the names of the people who fought against my country. I mean, it's not racism, insensitivity. To me, again, the issue is open up the analysis of institutional racism for everybody, and together we can do it. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, there was a lot of good stuff there. And also just real quick to address the, YouTube question. I mean, I don't know if you necessarily want to say what you do, but I'll just say what I do. I am, not a student yet. I've been working for most of my life, just in like various like warehouse jobs. But I do plan, now that I've saved up, to become an educator. You know, I do want to go to school to be a history teacher, because me, I've always liked history. I was like, I find it more engaging and interesting than like reading like fiction stories, because these like events actually happened, and it's through that, reading all of the various like histories, that you see reoccurring themes of domination and oppression, and to some extent that sort of radicalized me a little bit. It was only I hate to say it was only once it affected me personally that I really got involved. But like I have a question written down here, but there was something that you added towards the end. If you could just repeat your question, the way you said it.
Yeah, so the last part was, to what extent should violence play a part in activism for these social justice causes?
Like on our end?
Yeah, you can say on your end.
I mean, the system is violent in and of itself. I don't think that we would be the aggressors in in that sort of fight. I would say it's more self-defense. We're not just gonna, rather we shouldn't just lie down and take it as is. I'm not shy about protecting myself, protecting my comrades, my friends, and my family, and my community and my people. Yeah. I guess that's how I would answer that part. And yeah, like with like things like not just BLM and like Stop Asian Hate. I do definitely believe in those sort of like interracial like coalitions and alliances. I mean, the Rainbow Coalition, of Fred Hampton and whatnot. That was very big and very powerful. And just like as a thing in and of itself, it was very scary to the man and to the pigs and the powers that be and whatnot. But like, I would also, stress a sort of like intersectional like analysis of like a lot of like mass movements, because for me, like the ideas and like the like positions and the ideologies are like important, sure, but it's the people that you are going to be working with, and you have to really know like where people are coming from, and you have to like understand their like interests. I don't say interests as in like hobbies. I mean like what their goals are and what they want to accomplish and what affects them personally. It's just like, are they coming from like the most like are they like coming from a very like tough like day-to-day oppression and like harassment and whatnot? Are they like the most, are coming from a very marginalized perspective, or are they a little more like upper class? They have like, are they, do they have like political agendas that they want to move forward? Do they work with the pigs? you know, with like the feds and shit. It's just like, it's like that sort of thing that, we always like take caution, at least here in our local context, you know, like people work with the pigs, like that's already like a red flag for us. It's just like, you know, you're working with the oppressors, you know, and like, never mind like letting the pigs get too close, you know. It's just like, something goes wrong, you decide to sell me out, I'd rather not even know you, you know. Like you gotta build that trust. Is like, I guess a lot of this can be summed up with the, you know, that old line, not all skin folk is kinfolk, you know. Someone could share the same color skin as you, or like, you know, a similar like oppressive background, but you know, if they have some sort of like privilege or edge, on you, and they feel like they can leverage that and sell you out to further themselves, then, you know, you gotta take caution. I'm trying to think of what else, but you know, if there's something, you want to, something that we've said that you want to comment on. I don't know. I always prefer, back and forth dialogue a lot more, because it helps keep my train of thought going.
I want to say something very quick in relationship to your future plans, right? To get to be, I like the word you use, educator, rather than a professor or a teacher, right? An educator is a different role. Educator means to build the people, to construct them from the bottom up. So, and I want to, in that effort that you have and all your colleagues and my friends too, because some of the Brown Berets are my friends, is that you will find connections at the university. Let me tell you, you establish connection with us because we have to fight it together. And let me tell you, when they talk about more representation, in the past, that is not a practice anymore. At the university, you take any class with me or with anybody else. And I know that you are in social justice movement, that you are spending time going to teach in the evening. Well, guess what? I'll give you credit for that. That is a way of making and changing the curriculum. Okay, another way, right? I don't know if you have friends who were in Mecha in the past, of the Brown Berets. We have a newspaper on campus. You hear probably about Venceremos. And that, again, you open the doors for the whole student body. That's how you gain also representation, right? Whether they like your point of view, that is different. But you already established the connection at the institutional level. It's exactly what you said. I like that very much. Whatever you are doing, making sure is gonna be reflected in institutional changes. Because that is one of the problems of social movements. They don't get represented. And I know, don't think they're gonna open the door, right? But 3 years later, they are gonna close it. I tell you that. Right? Because it's the issue of tokenism that you're talking about. But when you establish a newspaper, guess what? At the university, well, in my university, I'm not going to make propaganda, we created a class in the communication department for the Brown Beret and Mecha students on newspaper, how to create a newspaper. What you are doing while studying, while creating your curriculum. Because let me tell you, you go to university, in the kind of work you do, you need to sacrifice yourself. Believe me, it's a big cost. And I admire you for that, and I support you for that, because I did the same. I got my PhD when I was 40. I was supposed to get it when I was 25. But engaging in what you are doing is you are transforming the institution for everybody behind you, for our bros. And that is exemplary. But we can establish those connections again. We do have those newspapers. We have a space in the media too, right? But again, those are things that we can be working out and work together. Thank you for your work, really. You are taking up 60 years of social movement history coming from Chicanos and Latinx. That's a big burden. But bro, you're strong. We can make it.
So I just wanted to say thank you. I'm Artie. Thank you for saying that, Armando. And I kind of wanted to direct a question to the Brown Berets because I think that you kind of already answered it. But so I'm a student and I'm contemplating, getting a PhD. And so, you had said that it's kind of like an act of, opening up these spaces for other people. But I think that for me, how do we walk this contradiction between wanting to occupy these spaces, for liberation and helping liberate other people, and also to learn more and to write more about our own people and our histories in an equitable way. But, along that, people will discredit and diminish the work that you do. And so, is it worth it, to get a degree when it really is just a paper that signifies the knowledge of the colonizer? And, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I mean, I'm not like beyond the paper, like, I would say like the education, part of it is important. And like, if the PhD is like necessary to get that position, I would say go for it. Sometimes you just have to deal with like certain like political realities, and if it does like help you like create a space, I think that's fine, but like, again, like with caution, like once you get there, try to be as independent as possible. Although, it is, I say this, but I would not like apply the same sort of logic within a like political, like electoral like environment, because I don't know, that sort of thing doesn't appeal to me. I would encourage people to distance themselves from any like the Democratic or Republican Party and electoralism in general. But yeah, no, I mean, being an educator, I think, is always positive, so long as you are helping to educate, like, as many people as possible, not just the like sort of like pre-approved list that the institution like gives you,
Prof. Armando, any final comments before we wrap up as we near the end of our roundtable?
Oh, why did you make this meeting so short? And why only once a year or once every 10 years? No, I do really appreciate what you're doing. And I really admire the work of UVU. It's getting national recognition for what you guys are doing. Again, at the end of the questionnaire you send us, there is a question that I would like to hear the Brown Berets talk about that. The question is, and of course I have 3 or 4 answers, what can we do to heal the colonial wounds as much as possible. Brown Berets, help us on this. What can you do to close the wounds that the oppressor and the colonizer has opened in our bodies? What can you do? Is it possible?
Yeah, this is something we had a long discussion last night amongst, let's say, ourselves. And I think what one of our members was saying is just like, you know, this sort of like healing is just like, you know, it's something you do, for yourself. You don't need to, to prove, like, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. There are things that you do need to consider, especially with like the complex issues between like, mestizaje and like Latinidad, you know, like these sort of like weird like ways of identifying or like building an identity for ourselves. Because, you know, like a lot of us, you know, it's just like it's difficult for us to like really track down like where we come from, you know. And you know what they were saying is that you have to like take time to recognize all the little things in your life that are, you know, part of your heritage and your culture from like a colonized like area. You know, they might seem small, but you know, they are artifacts of you know, of our people's past that, you know, that they've tried to you know, erase and hide. And like, you know, they successfully did it to me. You know, it wasn't until the conversation last night that I realized so much about myself. And just recognizing that one is just like we're still here, you know. Like they haven't gotten rid of us yet. And so long as we continue to to grow and you know, like build ourselves up, you know, and you know, it's just like it's, you know, we're still surviving. Like on the other hand, you know, it's just like the scars, it's just like, or you know, wait, let me find my little card. Like, oh wait, here it is. No, here it is. Yeah, like dealing with like colonization and you know, like healing from that. It's sort of hard to heal from that because, you know, it's still like ongoing. It not the at least for like most Latin Americans, like obviously I'm not talking about like, you know, we're still colonies of Spain, but you know, like the descendants of colonizers are still like you know, around us. And you know, I guess that's sort of like the tricky part for a lot of us, you know, because it's like we have like this weird blend of what is it, like indigenous, and like African heritage in us, but we do have, on the other hand, have that like colonizer like heritage as well, you know. And although the caste system was abolished like, you know, forever ago, like it was still just sort of there lingering in the background. And you know, because of the like, you know, like prevalent racism like throughout the years, you know, a lot of like our ancestors, you know, they try to present themselves a lot whiter you know, than maybe they were, to like, you know, hopefully secure better employment or a better like opportunity, or maybe just to avoid harassment. And it wasn't until like later on that like we just sort of said it's like we're just doing away with all that, with like the idea of like white, indigenous, and Black, and then we're just all one, we're just mestizo. And while I do think it was I don't know what to fully make of it, but the sort of downside of that sort of like oversimplification is that you do lose touch with those like indigenous roots, and it sort of like sidelines and marginalize like indigenous communities who are still alive today. They're not gone, but they're sort of like swept under the rug, as just like and it's just made it even harder to like go back and really like review one's one's heritage, not even like talking about like sort of like all the migration that's happened, like people like being displaced and coming to the United States, or like moving to another like Latin American country, and even further back, having to leave their little hometowns just to find work, whether on some plantation or a railroad or a mine or to the city or something. There's just always been that movement. It can be really hard to find one's lineage when like going into the fog of history. But yeah, how to heal that? I mean, I don't know. I can't think of anything right now as a way to heal. I would say, you can find other people like you, other people who are lost and on this journey, and build connections in that sense, and maybe you can find your way back together.
Yeah, just to add something real quick to that, what I'm saying, just pretty much, just we're not going to fully heal until we, the land is back, till we abolish the whole damn system, what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
We could take steps right now, what I'm saying, just like, organize, mobilize, revolutionize your hood, your people, while you're doing it, what I'm saying, you're creating an alternative system that's anti-capitalist, what I'm saying? So, what I'm saying, just little steps right there, what I mean? You're getting there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for adding that positive note there.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Well, unfortunately, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we are out of time. On behalf of Lydia, Tino, our amazing students, our supporters on campus in Latin American Studies, I want to extend a hearty thank you to our presenters for being here today. So you can't see us all behind the camera, but we're all clapping, shaking our hands. Rose Park Brown Berets, Dr. Solórzano, Dr. Wanzer-Serrano, thank you for being here, for sharing your insights, your perspectives, your experiences, and your truths. Also, to our viewers, thank you for sharing this space with us. The recording link will be circulated and posted soon, so by all means, please do share it with your network so we continue the conversation, as hopefully this will just be the first of many more to come. Keep fighting the good fight, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you all.
Sorry,